North and the South, Egbeda Rejibo Federal Constituency of Osun State. I ask Mr. Speaker to second the amendments ably moved by the Honorable who just moved the amendment now. I so second, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Those in favor of the amendment say aye. Those against say nay. The next have it. Respected colleagues, I want to beg our colleagues who want to add value to it to understand that it's not easy to move into the lion's den. So I would rather put a question so that we save our time. Those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. Let's have it. Thank you. Respected colleagues, the first business for the day is presentation of one bill, and I invite the clerk to read the short title of the bill.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, Emergency Economic Stimulus Bill 2020, first reading.
Respected colleagues, the first order of the day is the commencement of debate on the general principle of a bill for an act to provide for relief on corporate tax liability, suspension of import duty on selected goods, and deferral of residential mortgage obligations to the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria for a fixed term to protect jobs and alleviate the financial burden on citizens in response to the economic downturn occasioned by the outbreak of COVID-19 disease and for related matters, standing in the name of Honorable Femi Bajamila. All members will recall that the bill was read the first time today, 24th March 2020. I now invite Honorable Femi to move for the constitution, for the second reading of the bill.
Thank you once again, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues. This bill is titled the Emergency Economic Stimulus Bill. It is a bill for an act to provide for relief on corporate tax liability, suspension of import duty on selected goods, and deferral of residential mortgage obligations to the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria for a fixed term to protect jobs and alleviate the financial burden on citizens in response to the economic downturn occasioned by the outbreak of COVID-19 disease and for related matters. Speaker, honorable colleagues.
Silence, please. Silence. This is a very important bill. Please listen in silence.
Seconder. Honorable Ataka.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, my distinguished colleagues. My name is Honorable Adeshegun Abdul Majid Adekoya, representing Ijebu North, Ijebu East, Ogun Waterside Federal Constituency. I'm from Ogun State. I rise to second the motion, the bill as ably moved by Right Honorable Femi Bajamila, representing Surulere, Surulere 1 Federal Constituency. I so second, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Your Excellency, you can now move.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues. This bill is a child of necessity. It is sponsored by my good self and all 9 other principal officers of this House, namely the Deputy Speaker, Representative Ahmed Wase, Representative Al-Hassan Ado Garba, Representative Peter Patasi, Representative Mohammed Tahir Mongonu, Representative Inkiruka Onyejocha, Representative Ndudi Godwin Elumelu, Representative Toby Okechukwu, Representative Gideon Guani Lucas, and Rep. Adeshegun Adekoya Abdul Majid. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, it is often said that unusual circumstances call for unusual measures. Or if you like, desperate situations call for desperate measures. We are at that point today in our lives as a nation. We're in very perilous, unusual times. It is time for us as a body to begin to think outside the box on how to deal with and confront the unusual menace that has bedeviled our country, nay, the world. Honorable Speaker, honorable colleagues, these are sober times for reflection. We are here, as is often said, not to represent ourselves, but to represent the people who elected us into this hallowed chamber. In so doing, we must hold very dear the truths which we swore to, as stated in the Constitution, that the security and the welfare of these people must be paramount in our minds. And that is why the leadership has come together to come up with a bill that will, to whatever extent, cushion the devastating effect of coronavirus. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, many a times when we're faced with, let me take that back, we've never been faced with a situation like this. But the government normally takes one initiative or the other through either a presidential fiat or executive fiat, if you may. But there is no better initiative than the one that comes from the House of the people. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, on the face of this bill, which I will explain in some detail, on the face of this bill, it seems to benefit corporations and companies, because essentially it is a bill that stands on a tripod, 3 legs, one of which, and the main one of which, is to give tax relief to corporate bodies who keep their employees and their jobs intact. So when you look at it on the face of it, it appears to be a bill that benefits the corporate organizations. But when you look at it deeply, and the contents of the bill, and the end user or the end beneficiary of the bill, it is actually the people who we represent. Because what the bill seeks to do on its first leg is to protect their jobs. What the bill seeks to do is to ask employers of labor that if you from March 1st to December 20th, end of the year, which is the tax year, if you keep your employees' job intact and you continue to pay them, whether they're working from home or they're not working from home, because it will come a time, well, let me not say that it is inevitable. Already, people have been stopped from coming to work. The natural reaction or the consequence of that Because it's always about the bottom line from the employer, is to make you redundant. When you're redundant and you're not earning a salary, you see, when one person is working, there are several others that are dependent on him. So when you save the job of that person and you give an employer the incentive not to follow, as in FURLOUGH, or not to fire, if you want a more colloquial term, that employee, you are saving thousands of people who are dependent on him. So what this bill seeks in its provision is that if you pay for your employees, you pay your employees' salary, pay as you earn. At the end of the year, the government will give you a rebate of 50% of whatever you are paid. Many may argue that may cut into the revenue of government. Now, if that be the case, yes, it is time that the government takes a haircut to save the people it serves. If that is the argument, that it will affect our revenue to a little extent or even to a large extent, there are times when sacrifices need to be made. And this time around, it is for government to make that sacrifice. The second leg of the bill, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, deals with mortgages. Part of the cardinal principles and obligations of this House, as stated clearly in the Constitution, is to offer shelter to every citizen. The government has developed a robust housing policy. PMIs have been created or established. There's a housing fund. Employees are paid into the housing fund. Now they have shelter over their heads. But for how long? If at the end of the day you're not able to pay your mortgage, you stand to lose your home and your shelter. It is with this in mind that we have decided, or thought it best, to also protect public officials, civil servants. And don't forget, as I stated earlier, if you are protecting one, you are probably protecting about 10 who are dependent on him. To put a moratorium on the payment of mortgage, however long is decided, 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is, to cushion the effect of this ravaging virus. The third leg of the tripod, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, is to suspend import duties on medicines, medical equipment, personnel protective equipment, and other such medical materials as may become essential to managing and eradicating an outbreak of COVID-19 virus in Nigeria. What do I mean? Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, many of the essential gear that is required to protect us, as such like you are wearing, and like many of us are wearing today, many of them are imported. Not only are they imported, it's difficult to find them, at least here in Nigeria. Now, this medical equipment already fall under the cover of, they are exempted from VAT, but they are not exempted from import duty. So what we seek to do with this bill is to open the gates, open our shores, allow businessmen, government, parastatals, private individuals to bring in this equipment, to bring in this protective gear without thinking of the cost implication or the high percentage that will be needed to be paid to customs. These are short-term relief measures, and it's important to state, and if I may just divert, at this point to also commend private individuals and institutions. Like today I was reading a message from GT Bank that has gone out of his way to begin to establish a 100-bed hospital isolation center fully equipped in Lagos, and to encourage others to do same. But in encouraging them, we must also walk the talk by passing bills such as this that will help such institutions in bringing these things in without worrying about the financial burden it will cost. Speaker, honorable colleagues, it is important I state at this juncture or at this point that this bill is temporary, for want of a better word. It expires in December. It has what is called, in legal terms, a sunset clause, which means from that date as stated in the bill, it automatically expires. We can review the bill before the expiration date if in the next 1 month, 2 months, hopefully, there is even no need for it anymore. We have been able to beat the virus. Then the bill can be reviewed and the expiration date move forward. But to give us that room to maneuver and to do that which we ought to do, the expiration date, the sunset clause in the bill is for December, in time to meet the next fiscal year. Honorable colleagues, Mr. Speaker, I think if we can push this bill through, as my friend Honorable Osai often says, with the speed of light, giving it the urgency of now, the fierce urgency of now that it requires, I think we would have gone a long way in doing that which we're here to do, that is the security of lives and property of those who we represent. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, honorable colleagues.
Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, right honorable members of these great chambers, the Green Chamber, the House of the Nigerian people. I am Honorable Ado Dogwa. Mr. Speaker, I represent the people of Dogwa, Tudunwada Federal Constituency from Kano State. I rise, Mr. Speaker, to, in a very small way, put my weight behind the mover of this all-important bill, Right Honorable Femi Bajabiamila, representing Surulere 2, Lagos State. One, sorry. Mr. Speaker, I want to believe that this is a bill that is not only apt and timely, but it's a bill that each and every one of us has to support, given the circumstances we find ourselves. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, like the mover has succinctly addressed this House and explained fully the intentions of the bill, I want to also understand, Mr. Speaker, this is a bill that is intended to provide what one can call a human face in the light of our corporate organizations and other profit-driven institutions of our economy. The economy, as we speak, Mr. Speaker, if I may borrow the words of some of my members here, is bleeding. And a bill of this nature certainly is needed in place to be able to address the subsequent bleeding in our economy. It is to provide a human face, like I said, Honorable Speaker, so that some of these institutions that have profit motive, and they are very paramount and key to our economic operations, are given what we can call like a soft cover protection, so as to allow them continue to run some of their businesses. Mr. Speaker, this is a bill that is written to the credit of the principal officers of the House of Representatives. I want at this point say it's a bill that is to the credit of each and every one member of this Green Chamber. Mr. Speaker, we are doing that because it's a matter that we would have taken by way of motion, just get a resolution of the House. But as a body of principal officers, we decided to give it all the importance and the relevance it deserves, so that we now put what we call the instrumentality of the law behind our intentions. In most cases where motions and resolutions are taken here, you find these motions not respected by even agencies, not even the executive arm of government. Mr. Speaker, our intention as body of principal officers and leaders of this great chamber, of course the entire membership of this House, is to impose mandatory status by providing instrumentality of the law to this our intention, so that at the end of the day, this thing will now have all what it takes to be a law of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and respect about it is mandatory. Mr. Speaker, let me say also, I believe we have discussed enough with the mover who had all the intentions of the bill him. We have interacted at the body of principal officers meeting. We are not intending to declare the country as a tax-free regime, no. We are not going to declare Nigeria as a laissez-faire state, no. But in the circumstances, we need this kind of legislation to provide for protection so that our businesses can continue. Because at the end, if any business organization or institution or company decides to lay off its staffers, the consequences will be back on us, the leaders of this great nation, especially those of us who are elected to represent the people of Nigeria on the Green Chambers or House of Representatives. It is therefore my take that, like I said, this is a bill that is to the credit of all of us here. It is to the credit of our dear colleagues in the Senate. And I want to speak on behalf of the 360 members of this House here to urge the Senate to look at this bill within this spirit and also concur with the speed of the light, if I may borrow the words of Osai, Nicholas Osai. Mr. Speaker, this is a bill that will be for the good of the generality of the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. It has to pass, and no ground whatsoever will let this bill fail, because it's a bill that has human face. It's a popular bill. It has to succeed and see the light of the day. And I urge Mr. President, when this bill gets to his table, he also assent with all sense of nationalism and all sense of patriotism. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I so submit.
I will move fast, and I will plead that whoever that is going to speak subsequently should adhere strictly to 1.5 minutes, so that we can make progress quickly and then move to the next level. You took 3 minutes. Thank you. Respected colleagues, the question now, the bill bears the content. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Clerk is invited to read the title of the bill.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, a bill for an act to provide for relief on corporate tax liabilities, suspension of import duty on solicited goods, and the deferral of residential mortgage obligation to the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria for fixed term to protect jobs and alleviate the financial burden on citizens in response to the economic downturn occasioned by the outbreak of COVID-19 disease and for related matters. Second reading.
Leader, move that the House dissolve to the constitutional report. That's very colleagues. Leader, move that the House. You are the one who made the confusion. Sorry. Respected colleagues, he didn't do the right thing. He didn't do the right thing. The bill is referred to committee of the whole. He didn't do the right thing. He didn't do the right thing. Respected colleagues, the second order of the day is consideration of the bill for an act to provide for relief on corporate tax liability, suspension of import duty on selected goods, and the deferral of residential mortgage.
Honorable Sada Soli, resume your seat.
Mortgage Bank of Nigeria and
Honorable Sada Soli, resume your
for
seat.
fixed term to protect jobs
Honorable
and
Deputy, resume your
alleviate
seat.
the financial burden on citizens in response to the economic downturn occasioned by
Honorable
the outbreak
Babajali Salami, sit down.
of COVID-19 disease and related matters. All members will recall that the bill was committed to committee of the whole on Tuesday, 24th March 2020. Femi Bajama will move for the consideration of the report.
Honorable Oluga, resume your seat. Honorable Oluga, resume your seat. Madam Oluga, go to your seat.
Your Excellency, I move for the consideration of the report. You are moving for the consideration of the report.
Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, I move that this House to consider the report on the Emergency Economic Stimulus Bill 2020.
Seconder, Honorable Falake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. James Falike is my name. I rise to second the motion ably moved by our leader. I so second.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against say nay. That's it. Leader, move that would, the House resolve to committee of the whole to consider report.
Mr. Speaker, sorry, I'm fully masked now in compliance. I rise to move, as directed by the Speaker, that the House do move to the Committee of the Whole to consider reports of this very important and emergency bill. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I so move.
Deputy Leader.
Mr. Speaker, and my great colleagues, I am Comrade Peter Ohiozodia Patasi, representing Akoko Edo people. I second the motion that the House resolve to Committee of the Whole to consider report. I so do, Mr. Speaker.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against say nay. That's it. The House hereby resolve the Committee of the Whole to consider this report. Respected colleagues, the bill to be considered is for an act to provide for relief on corporate tax liability, suspension of import duty on selected goods, and deferral of residential mortgage obligations to the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria for fixed term to protect jobs and alleviate the financial burden on citizens in response to the economic downturn occasioned by the outbreak of COVID-19 disease and related matter. And I invite the Honorable Femi to move to give the synopsis of the bill.
Thank you, Chairman. Honorable colleagues, I believe this bill has been thoroughly debated at second reading, and at this stage of our procedure, I'll just quickly run through the synopsis again. It's a three-legged bill that deals with the grant that gives companies a rebate on companies' income tax to the value of 50% of payee deductions, so long as those companies maintain their payee rolls as at 1st March 2020 till 31st of December 2020. It also suspends import duties on medicines, medical equipment, and protective gear and other medical materials as may become essential to managing and eradicating COVID-19. And the third leg is to defer mortgage obligations on residential mortgages obtained by individual contributors to the National Housing Fund for 180 days in the first instance. Mr. Chairman, honorable colleagues, I think it basically has three clauses and they're pretty straightforward. And again, it is what the title says, it is an emergency bill that the sun will set on it in December. Mr. Chairman, honorable colleagues, I so urge the House to please consider the report so that we can move for third reading of the bill.
The question now is that clause 1 stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Clause 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, clause 7, clause 8, what's the point of order? No, clause 8, what's the point of order?
Sorry, my chair. I was looking at the deferral of payment of mortgages under the National Housing Fund. My point of order is to consider the clause before you pass it. 4.6. That's my observation, Chair.
Provision are low like that, so you are ruled out of order. Clause 8. Clause 9. Do we have observation in our rules?
Vote. Mr. Chairman, we are doing a law for this country. We should be very careful of what we are doing. Mr. Chairman, this clause 9 is saying the president shall have the power to seek a further extension of the deferral for a period not exceeding 180 days, subject to a majority vote. What is majority vote? I think we should be specific, either simple majority or two-thirds majority of the National Assembly. And we're talking about National Assembly, meaning. Hold on. We're talking about two chambers here, and here we're talking the National Assembly. Is it the two-thirds of each chamber of the National Assembly? It's a law. It's a law, and it should be futuristic. There may be this situation tomorrow. We should be two-thirds of each chamber of the National Assembly, or one-third of each chamber of the National Assembly. That will make it much more, legalistic.
me, so that we are properly guided. I believe, respected colleagues, Honorable Sada is a very experienced member of this House. I will say for any act that will amend, there has never been any provision to say you have to get to that or simple majority. What is done is that you bring it back to the House, and the House in consideration in the committee of the whole will consider and approve. So rather than making it very tight and difficult, it is either we leave it so, or we even expunge it so that we now know, we adjust to the fact that he has to come back to the House to seek for this thing. But not to go, we are not doing constitutional amendment. It is only constitutional amendment that will give you, and that you must obtain to that before you can achieve that. Let's be guided by that. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, let's remove that majority vote, pending the approval of National Assembly. Subject to the approval of National Assembly. Mr. Chairman, do I move that it should read subject to the approval of National Assembly? I so move, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I remain Mohamed Tahir Mongono. I represent Marte Mongono Ngangai, Federal Constituency of Borno State. Mr. Chairman, the language of the bill, as it is captured now, is correct and needs no further amendment. Under rules of interpretation, once you say majority, it presupposes simple majority. Under rules of interpretation. Under rules of interpretation. So the addition what Honorable Sada wants to add is superfluous. It's not necessary. It's superfluous. Because under rules of interpretation, once you say majority, it presupposes simple majority. If you want to turn majority, you qualify it. Simplicity.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not a lawyer, but I refer any member that is in this House to go back to the laws that we have legislated in this House. There was nowhere we said majority of the National Assembly. I challenge every member here. We are all students of this Parliament. We have to be, I know it's superfluous, I'm not a lawyer, but if it is superfluous, let us be realistic. Mr. Chairman, what I'm saying is, this is a law. It's a law we are passing for the use of this country. We might not be here tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think because this matter is important, whilst I disagree with Honorable Sada and I agree with Honorable Mongono, and I'll tell you why I disagree. But at the end of the day, if it's only going to make assurances double sure, we can go ahead and move with the amendment. But we're setting a dangerous precedent. The question I'll ask is this: how did we pass this bill? Simple majority is what was required to pass the bill. If majority is what is required to pass a bill, it becomes difficult to understand how to amend it, which can even just be a letter, will now require 2/3. You cannot pass a bill by majority and say amendment will be by 2/3, which means what is stated in the bill is clear. Majority is majority. Majority can be by 1. It can be by 1. That's a majority. But if it makes us more comfortable to add the word national, in fact, if you say passed by National Assembly, that itself may even be dangerous, because if you say passed by National Assembly, we can hit the gavel even if it's a minority. And you say it has been passed by National Assembly. So either way, it works. Either way, it works. So I would say, instead of even saying National Assembly, because that could be, you can say simple majority, if you want to add the word simple in front of majority. if you want to add the word simple in front of majority. Although that is superfluous, like I said. Because majority can be simple, can be full, can be middle. I don't know, I don't understand. The majority can be one. Can be one person. So, honorable colleagues, in the spirit of making everybody key into this bill, I don't think it will hurt if we make assurances double sure. But for me, I think I identify with Honorable Mongonu's position.
Your Excellency and the several colleagues, I'm not a lawyer, but I am more comfortable with the word National Assembly for the reason like this. That most often when we are doing consideration of reports, you hardly get 100% because of our nature of going doing assignment either on oversight or committee work, and that's difficult. So when we say National Assembly, I think we reduce the burden. Those in sitting can do the consideration. So instead of tagging 180, it's not easy to get 180 in consideration of report. I think all of us will agree to that one, sir. Thank you very much. Yes, sir. It's getting crowded, and then we are disobeying our rules too. Respected colleagues, yes, sir. I will beg that we please kindly leave this approach to the Speaker or any of our colleagues, so that we'll be able to solve our matter and then obey the rules of this distance sitting arrangement. Thank you. I think the law was first broken by Kano Jigawa Axis, and they are still doing it. So please, either one of you, you have to leave your seat, go to the back there. Dawaki and thank you. Thank you. Dawaki, move up there. Thank you. No, do this amendment so that I think to substitute 180, just approval of National Assembly. Yes. Yes. Dawaki. Thank you. Maybe Honorable TJ, you have to a little bit tilt. TJ, Kogi, tilt. Yes. Udil, you have to also change your position. Don't put the leader in danger. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, the amendment. Move the amendment properly.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, I move that clause 9 shall read in this manner: the President shall have the power to seek a further extension of the deferral for a period not exceeding 180 days, subject to the approval of National Assembly. I so move, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Distinguished honorable colleagues, I remain Honorable Osai Nicholas Osai. I represent the Kwani Federal Constituency of Delta State. I second the motion as moved by Honorable Sada from Katsina State as amendment of the motion as moved by Honorable Sada from Katsina State. I so second.
In favor of the amendment, say aye. Against any? Clause 9 as amended. Clause 10.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My amendment should read as this. I'm taking speed. Import duty on whatever on medicines and medical return goods, but extended. My mic is talking. You can hear me. My amendment is we shall retain import duty waiver on medical equipment, but we should extend it by reducing import duty on all items by 25%. My reason being, Falake, most of people in the business are the one who provides employment to majority of our people. If you may retain the custom duty for them within this period, when there's restricted movement, where will they get money to pay salaries for their staffs? There will be unemployment. Let us extend it to them, 25% reduction on all items of custom duties. As well as so move.
Custom duties? Hi.
Mr. Chairman, honorable colleagues, I think it's important that we put things in perspective and within reason. Reason why I do not support this amendment is that, first of all, we have 3 sources of revenue in Nigeria, main sources. One is oil, that has crashed, and our budget is in jeopardy right now. 2 is taxation. We're taking a little out of that now to give succor to the people. The third one is customs. If we now say we should slash across board all items 25%, it basically leaves the country broke. So I think within the limits that we can, that the limits of elasticity that we can expand this thing, I think we have with this bill. And I think we should, because it's a bill to do with a particular, it is narrowly fitted to a particular problem, we should restrict the issue of import duty waiver to medical equipment that deal and address the problem of COVID. Thank you.
Why I don't support the amendment is simple. We have already talked about tax rebation. And if we have reduced tax on corporate, if we have reduced tax by reason of this passage of this bill, there's no need reducing anything on import duties again, because especially we are pushing the effect in one aspect, which is okay. No, that's what I feel, Mr. Chairman.
I want to believe that my brother also appreciates the other explanation. Okay. Any second that we have, and it is amendment.
Majority of our businessmen, majority of our employment comes from the business people who hire people and pay their salaries. If their business is affected, they have no option other than to reduce their staff or even dismiss them. If we want to secure those employments, we must do something that will guarantee sustenance of employment. That's my concern.
You want to help us? I think we all understand that we need revenue. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues. I'm James Abiodun Faleke. I need to intervene on his behalf. I think what he should be addressing is the fact of demurrage charges. Since most workers are being granted holidays, are unable to go to their offices, and the ports are congested, most of these imports that will come in will be incurring a lot of demurrage. And so we should be addressing reduction in demurrage rather than import duty.
So, in this light, what could be a suggestion? Because it's not stated here.
No, his motion was to slash import duty by 25%. I would suggest that we amend, sir, that import demurrage for that period be slashed by that 25%. That would be my.
You are the chairman finance. I say you are the chairman finance, and you are pretty very sure, and it's known to all of us now, that because of the dwindling revenue in our country, we now have to slash the budget, which very soon the parliament will sit over it, possibly to consider those areas of amendment in the budget. Because what we are realizing now cannot fund the budget. And any attempt to further slash from the palliative that has been given, I want to believe we are going to do a lot of harm. Not government. And we take tax from the corporate organizations. By implication, you pay to the corporate organizations, out of whatever they are generating, we should go there to take tax. Yes, sir.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm glad that a lot of members are interested in this. Everything anybody is saying is true. Most of the contributions is well-meaning and targeted at the masses. But I'm not sure if by our rules, I'm not sure, if by our rules we can vary a report or a bill or its report by matters outside the bill itself. I don't know that our rules permit us to introduce new matters after a bill has been read a second time and has been brought for consideration. So on that technical ground, I know we suspended our rules, except for this one we did not suspend. We suspended our rules for second reading. So, Mr. Chairman, I don't know, on the basis of relevance in our rules, I don't know if we can introduce extraneous matters. And don't also forget that the demurrage goes to private companies. The demurrage, as has been said, goes to private companies. So basically, if we take this amendment as to demurrage, we are slapping a tax on the reverse on this private companies. So I think we should look at it very critically.
Mr. Chairman.
I think we should be guided. Let me, please, the question now is either we continue with, we are not debating. We are not supposed to be debating when it comes to close by close consideration. Yes, sir. And maybe what I would like to add is to clear again that we can amend, we can insert, we can remove a word. So long we are doing consideration, it's in line with our own rules. It's in order. But I think for the benefit of our country and all of us, we need to maintain the status quo. Clause 10. Clause 11. Clause 12.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues. I rise to move an amendment on clause 12 to read for a 3 months period starting from March 1st to June 2020. This issue is purely revenue matter and the survival of this country. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, we are already bashed in the area of oil, where the price of oil is crashed, and so we should be able to come back here after 3 months to review this bill, depending on the situation we find ourselves in the country. Because if we leave it till end of the year, which is more than 9 months down the line, we might be in crisis, Mr. Speaker.
Amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I remain Honorable Henry Wauba, and I speak for the enterprising people of Mbitoli Kedru Federal Constituency. Mr. Chairman, I would like to disagree with the Chairman Finance based on this. I want to speak against the amendment. I can't second it. I disagree with it. No.
Ataka.
Amendment 12. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My amendment, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, can I see my amendment? You can, Mr. Chairman. Can I go,
Please sit down. Please, somebody is on his feet. Please sit down.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Honorable Abdul Majid Adekoya, representing Ijebu North, Ijebu East, of Waterside Federal Constituency, and from Ogun State. I rise to second the amendment ably moved by my colleague, Honorable Faleke. I so second, Mr. Chairman.
Before I put the question, colleagues, please, we have procedure and we have ways that is prescribed by law, just in accordance with the Constitution, that we should regulate ourselves on our conduct, on how somebody should raise his hand to talk. It is not permissible, and it's not in our own order for somebody just to rise, put it up on his own mic to say he wants to speak. It's never done that. You are supposed to raise your hand and call the attention. Everybody will be given a chair. You will give it that. Let us behave well. Let us respect ourselves and conduct ourselves properly, please. Those in favor of the amendment say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. You should have further amendment on the same clause. Clause.
Mr. Chairman, line 12. Line 12.
Honorable Aburin, please be guarded.
Understand, I want you to understand that you can be disciplined.
Honorable Aburin, please be guarded.
There's provision in our own book. You can be disciplined, be guided. Clause 12 was amended. Clause 13. Amendment 13.
Amendment. I'm not on my own. Honorable Kiruka Oyejo, I represent the good people of Isukwa Muno Federal Constituency. I am from Abia State. I want to add a subject to National Assembly in Clause 13. Subject to National Assembly. Clause 13 said the President may exercise his powers under Section 13(1) of the Custom Excise Tariff. It is a consolidated act to further extend this waiver.
Of the laws that the mover of the bill or mover of the bill are asking you to exercise. You don't come to amend what is in that provision through another amendment. It will not take place. There may be collusion. Even if it is that they are quoting a specific function, a clause there. You should read the clause first before you know whether it can be amended or not amended. in exercise of this provision. So I cannot be subject to National Assembly. Clause 13, Clause 14, explanatory memoranda, long title. Leader, move that we report, revert back to prayer to report progress.
Right Honorable Chairman, please. No. Kai, Osai, can you stop that? When we report progress, then you will. Mr. Chairman, honorable members, I move that this House do reconvene to plenary and report progress of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Speaker and Mr. Chairman, honorable members, I so move. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My dear colleagues, I'm Comrade Peter Ohiozudi. I second the motion that this House reverts to plenary to report proceeding. I so do.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against say nay. That's have it. What's the government? Please, Kabiru, Honorable Bentalu, Honorable, to resume your seat. Honorable Kabiru, Honorable Bentalu, after the adoption. Respected colleagues, the House in the Committee of the Whole considered the report on the bill for an act to provide for the relief on corporate tax liability, suspension of import duty on selected goods, and deferral of residential mortgage obligations to the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria for fixed term to protect jobs and alleviate the financial burden on citizens in response to the economic downturn occasioned by the outbreak of COVID-19 disease and related matters. Approved Clauses 1-8, approved Clauses 9 as amended, approved Clauses 10 to 11, approved Clauses 12 as amended, approved Clauses 13 to 14, extraordinary explanatory memoranda and the long title for the bill. Leader, move for the adoption of the bill, of the report.
Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I rise to move that we adopt the report. We should adopt the reports as reported to plenary. Mr. Speaker, I so move.
Yes, Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Comrade Peter Ohiozudi, representing Akoko Edo Federal Constituency. I support the motion as ably moved by the Leader of the House. I so support Mr. Speaker.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against say nay. That's a bit. Mr. Speaker, you cannot take a seat.
Yes. Step light.
Honorable Tolu, resume your seat.
After here, you have been carrying something.
Clerk, third reading, please.
Deputy Chief Whip, resume your seat. Deputy Chief Whip, resume your seat.
Honourable Speaker, honourable members, a bill for now to provide for the relief of contract tax liability, suspension of import duty on scheduled goods and the deferred or residential mortgage obligation to the federal government for the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria for fixed term to protect jobs and alleviate the financial burden on citizens in response to the economic downturn occasioned by the outbreak of COVID-19 disease and protect matters. Third reading.
Leader, please move for adoption of the votes and proceedings.
Right, Honourable Speaker, I rise that we adopt the votes and proceedings of today being our emergency sitting as directed by the Right Honourable Speaker. Honourable members, I so move.
Deputy Leader.
Mr. Speaker, my colleagues, I second the motion as ably moved by the Leader of the House. I so second.
Those in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. The votes and proceedings of today, Tuesday the 24th, is hereby approved. Honorable colleagues, let me quickly mention that unfortunately we couldn't take Honorable Robert Yo's and Honorable Nzodu's motion today, which has been pending. It was for the urgent need to secure the Benue communities from the new farming season and curb the incessant attacks, killings, and maiming of citizens in Kwande, Guma, Logua, and Makodia local government areas of Benue State from by armed herdsmen. So Honorable Yo and Honorable Mzondu, we will take that when we come back. I just think it's important. I have a letter of appreciation from Honorable Francis Wave, thanking members and showing appreciation for supporting him during his book launch on Tuesday, March 17, 2020. He says, I am humbled by your show and solidarity and love, especially for your donations and support. I sincerely pray the Almighty God to grant all your heart's desire. Honorable Reverend Francis Wave. Honorable colleagues, just a few remarks before we adjourn the House. I want to show appreciation and thank you for yet again your show of commitment and sense of responsibility in the manner and speed with which we have passed the two items, the resolution on the motion and the bill for today. Well, thank you for your call of duty. Unfortunately, we have to adjourn the House for 14 days in the first instance, but I will make these remarks before we do. Honorable colleagues, and in making these remarks, I guess the House is speaking to the public as well. We are gathered here today in uncertain times for our country and indeed for the whole of humanity. We are affronted by a new and deadly disease that threatens to forever alter the nature of our lives. We do not know how this virus and the disease it delivers have come to be. We do not yet have a cure for this disease, nor do we have a vaccine to protect against the virus. What we do know is that over the last 6 months, hundreds of thousands of people have been infected all over the world. Thousands have died, and the world economy is experiencing a contraction unlike anything we have ever seen in recent history. It now falls on us, the government of the people, to act and quickly, decisively to forestall the worst consequences of a nightmare that has been made real. Before now, all the efforts of government have been focused on preventing an outbreak in the country by enforcing a robust screening regime at our ports of entry. It is now clear that the time has come for us to develop and implement a more robust strategy, one that prepares us for the possibility of significant outbreak with all the calamity that entails. We are glad that the government is now doing exactly this. We have never experienced a time like this, and we're not alone. From the United States and North America to Europe and Asia, all the countries of the world are reacting to the challenge of the moment by adopting aggressive approaches to managing the outbreak of the disease and radical interventions to protect their people from the additional ravages of a global economy that no longer adheres to the old expectations that have underpinned our planning, our projections, and our expectations. We owe it to our people to be just as aggressive and just as radical, if doing so is what it will take to save our nation and prevent the tragedies of death, destitution, and devastation that threaten us all. The House of Representatives is now going to adjourn for 14 days in the first instance. This is not a holiday. It is an act of necessity in furtherance of the social distancing and isolation guidelines that have proven to be effective in preventing secondary transmission of the COVID-19 disease. The leadership of the House will continue to observe developments and respond as the circumstances demand. If it becomes necessary, we may reconvene to act on emergency legislation and possible amendment of the Appropriation Act 2020. The Clerk of the National Assembly will maintain essential personnel to ensure full compliance with sanitation, health and safety requirements in the National Assembly. No member of the House of Representatives may travel out of the country during this time. All activities of the House of Representatives are suspended for the duration, whether those activities are scheduled to occur within the National Assembly or outside of it. Members are enjoined to show faithful leadership by restricting all non-essential movements and observing self-isolation and social distancing according to the guidelines of the National Center for Disease Control. Before we adjourn the House today, the House today has mandated the federal government to establish emergency care and isolation centers in every state of the Federation. These centers will allow for as many of our people who present symptoms of this disease to be tested, treated, and managed in a conducive atmosphere to prevent further transmission and ensure that those already infected have a fighting chance at survival and recovery and reunion with those who love them and miss them and pray for them. The House has further directed that the Federal Ministry of Health take urgent action to establish an emergency corps of medical professionals who will be deployed to manage these ad hoc emergency care centers across the country as the need arises. We do not make this directive lightly, as we have already seen in other parts of the world, the high price that doctors and nurses have paid since the emergence of this new disease. However, this is a time that calls for service to a purpose greater than self and for reaching up to the highest ideals of which we are capable of. In Ogun State, the brilliant and inspired intervention of Dr. Amarachi Allison, who identified the index case and took quick action, prevented the secondary transmission of this disease and bought us time. Her actions saved lives. She has honored herself, her profession, and her family, and we are eternally grateful. When all of this is over, this House shall not forget, and we will make sure too that our nation does not forget. For all those doctors, nurses, and other medical professionals who will answer the call of duty in these difficult times, the leadership of the House of Representatives, and indeed the entire House, stand as one to assure you that we will ensure that you are provided with the tools you need to protect yourself and to practice effectively. You will receive all that is your due. You will forever have the thanks of a grateful nation, and you will never be forgotten. The House has also today passed emergency legislation which we have titled the Emergency Economic Stimulus Bill 2020, to provide a new regime of corporate tax rebates to encourage companies in the country to maintain their payroll status for the immediate term. This, we hope, will prevent large-scale job losses in an already fragile economy and allow our people to carry on their lives as best as possible in the event of a large-scale outbreak of the sort we have witnessed in other parts of the world. The bill also seeks to grant a 3-month deferral for payments on mortgages obtained by individual contributors to the National Housing Fund. It also suspends all import duties on medicines, medical equipment, and other essentials required to help in the treatment and management of COVID-19 disease. These are all temporary measures that we hope will help our country to more effectively manage this present crisis and emerge from it with the possibility of rebirth and renewal. To Nigerians, however fleeting or enduring these present challenges may persist, it is already certain that our world has changed. And after this moment, we will have to answer to many hard questions and make difficult choices. For now, we concern ourselves only with the imperatives of survival, the survival of our country and our fragile world. Let every citizen be aware that it may yet be required of us that we take further audacious action and impose other drastic measures to aid in the control and eradication of COVID-19 from our shores. Let us all be prepared to do that which is required of us at the appropriate time. These measures we have taken and those already being implemented by the executive arm will not suffice. We need also that you, the individual, act always with consideration for the greater good. Avoid the dissemination of unsubstantiated rumors. Do not contribute to the propagation of media content that serves no purpose except to create panic. Engage in good faith with constituted authority in your locations. Maintain sanitary hygiene practice and follow the instructions of government agencies. The House commends the actions of Mr. President, state governors, and others in public and private life who have shown extraordinary leadership during these trying times. We ask that you continue to keep the faith, acting only in consideration of the best interests of the Nigerian people. If we set our minds right, embrace each other in love and brotherhood, we will come through these troubling times. We will survive, we will recover, and then we will thrive. One nation under God, free, peaceful, and prosperous. Thank you all. God bless you, and God bless Nigeria. Announcement from Honorable Raji, Chairman, House Services, says the meeting of the committees on House Services earlier scheduled for this afternoon has been postponed indefinitely. Honorable Raji and all other such chairmen, this has been overtaken by events. Automatically, from the moment we walk out of this door, all committee activities, everything is suspended for the next 14 days. Leader. Leader, do the calculation quickly, mentally. You're very smart. 14 days from today, what is the date of resumption?
Right Honorable Speaker, honorable members, Adodogwa is my name, Mr. Speaker, by the grace of God, the leader of the 9th House of
I like your style. You're taking your time to introduce yourself whilst you are calculating the date.
Honorable members, while I thank members for having time to be part of this emergency sitting of this honorable house, I rise as directed by the Speaker to move that this House do adjourn for 14 days, equivalent to 7th of April 2020. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I so move. Thank you.
The second deputy leader.
Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues, I am from Repeater Ohio Zudia Partisan, representing Akoko Edo Federal Constituency. I support the motion that this House do adjourn till 7th of April by 11 a.m. I so second.
Those in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. The ayes have it. House adjourned till 7th April.